Hey guys, this is Comet5 and we're back with Real Space Program. Today we're looking at a space shuttle. I designed this myself. Basically I used B9, Vanguard Tech right there. I used Flight Engineer. I used some MechJeb for this because I just am not fast enough to get this thing inserted into orbit. Moves very quickly once you get it out of the atmosphere, and I also use the Shuttle Engines pack. So this spacecraft is basically just kind of designed to be functional, not really basically look exactly like the shuttle. As you can see, it's got just a single poodle engine there. You can see here's my, I guess you could say, HUD. Again, this is Real Space Program, so we're using Farm Aerospace, we're using Deadly Reentry, remote tech, all that. But I just kind of decided I was going to build one of these here last week after I finished the first episode of this series. So we're going to go ahead and light this thing up, and I'll talk about this thing on the way up. As you can see, it's very stable. Right now I'm not touching the controls, that's all the SAS. Just gonna bring this thing up, and what we've got on board is the third ComSat. I put one up in a previous attempt to get some video of this spacecraft, but unfortunately it did not record half of it. I ran out of hard drive memory mid-recording, so we did not end up getting video of the first actual usage of this thing in this cruise, or in this state, rather. Not this cruise. It's just weird. But, as you can see, we're coming up on SRB step, and we just released the SRBs. And they did not actually explode. As you can see, we're also using the Kerbal City Lights and Clouds mod. It's an excellent mod. It makes everything look really nice when you're high in orbit. Maybe even will give us a reason to possibly just insert basically a few meteorological satellites, just because we can. We've got space to fill and launch and stuff. But like I said, on board, this thing is a ComSat. After testing the ComSat that I launched in the previous episode, I realized that it was not actually going to allow us to use it as a relay. It was only going to be basically a space probe. So I ended up just tossing it out and launching another one up. And then I did the other launch and inserted that about a third of the way around Kerbin. So we may be able to get away with just using 3 satellites. Will we? I don't know. That is an excellent question. We'll find out later on in this series, I guess. So you can see we're just kind of doing our climb out. We've got it rolled over very steeply, trying to gain as much speed as possible. We've already drained the top tank there. We're draining the bottom tank. We want to avoid draining we want to drain as much fuel out of this because we don't have near as much fuel in this actual orbiter. This is just like the orange tank on the space shuttle. It is not intended at all to remain in orbit. You can see there's what I have to do to save it if it flips over. And then I just get into this oscillation here, but I'm not yet up at my actual quantum altitude. And you can see there's burnout. So that's a problem because we're not quite done. So we're basically going to have to finish this with the onboard fuel we have. As you can see, I'm just maneuvering this thing with RCS because we don't exactly have enough fuel on board. We're going to pick up a little bit more speed and a little bit more altitude for our apoapse, and then we will have MechJeb circularize it. I don't want to do it because we're going to come up on it very quickly. We're doing about 2,000 meters per second, 2,200 meters per second to be exact. Well, fairly exact, almost 2,300. You can see there's just me pulsing that last bit. And MechJeb will go ahead and take us up to our burn altitude and conduct the burn. And unfortunately, MechJeb, or for us, MechJeb forgot that we are not out of the atmosphere yet. So we do have to use a little bit more fuel trying to rescue this. So I will engage that once we're out of the atmosphere. And actually, this is a very, very, very not really efficient, because we're not going to have full fuel on board the orbiter. But really very efficient in that we're going to be pretty much not needing any more well, anything. It's a very small burn, so we don't have to do much in the way of that. This spacecraft is not powered by solar panels. Those two solar panels I probably could take off and get a little bit better performance out of this thing. It's just something I haven't gotten around to. It is powered by two RTGs, which are basically going to act as the fuel cells for this thing. But the solar panels do give it a nice little kick when it comes to power. It has plenty of RCS on board. It's probably the most maneuverable spacecraft I've ever built using RCS. And here we come up on our burn, and MechJeb's going to make this burn, and then I will handle operations after that. Because it's going to be basically a deal of we're going to get this satellite into a fairly high orbit. And we are going to, well, we're not going to really get it into a high orbit because we've got total coverage. In fact, if we were to just pop it out now, well, that would probably be best. But I think I'm going to have it just orbit around for a bit, and I'll show you guys bringing this thing back into land. So you can see here's our payload bay. We've got lights on the inside, so I'm going to go ahead and flip that on so that we can see everything nice and clearly. Not that we can't. We are on the day side of Kerbin. If I zoom out here real quick, you can see the beautiful clouds. I went ahead here recently and did the texture reduction pack for B9 as well, so we no longer have the best looking textures, but you know, it's not really a huge issue. We want performance a little bit more than we want beautification. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to target a dish at one of them. We're going to probably target it at that. And then we'll go ahead and activate that dish so we can get comms established with the ground. And I don't know if, yeah, that one's, okay, yeah. Unfortunately, that satellite right there is a little bit higher in an orbit, and so it's actually below the horizon. Well, I'll look at that after I'm done with this. But I'm going to go ahead and pop this thing out. So basically what we're going to do here is we're just going to thrust away from the planet as hard as we can as soon as we get this thing separated. So I'm going to go ahead and put it out. And you can see there we hit our light and it floats free. Now, because I'm going to bring this thing back in here, you can see I'm changing over to our satellite, and there's the changeover lag. I'm going to change it over, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to target this at active vessel, activate that, and we're going to go ahead and pop these solar panels out just so we can keep this thing under control. And we're going to swap back to the shuttle. Now that we've got our payload in orbit, we really don't have a whole lot to do. We can keep this thing in orbit, but I really want to show you guys a return with this because it's kind of something that I had trouble with in the past. Basically, the procedure for returning this thing is you take it around and you put the periaps 35 kilometers or thereabout over the horizon, or over the Space Center. So what we're going to do actually is we're going to wait until the Space Center is on the day side. If we have to make the burn on the night side, that's perfectly fine. You can see this spacecraft is called Venus. If you can think of a better name, please let me know. I just needed names real quick. You can see we still got our Kaputnik floating around, our first launch of this series, which you guys unfortunately did not get to see. I don't think. I can't remember off the top of my head, to be totally honest. But we're just kind of going to float around here. And we're going to wait until, like I said, we're going to wait until Kerbin is on the day side. We don't want to land on the night side. Yes, we can, because the Space Center has runway edge lights. But I'd rather land on the day, if possible, at high noon. So we're going to have to wait another hour or so, because right now it's kind of going to be in our eyes if we land. That's never a fun thing. You can kind of faintly hear the wonders of 50 times music. And now that it's kind of in our, well, pretty much within that. So I want to be able to get this as precise as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and make the node here. Because we can go ahead and make that burn. I'm going to go ahead and just do that here real quick. You can see I'm trying to get my periaps down to about 35. Why 35? Well, I'm slightly mirroring the space shuttle's re-entry procedure, but I'm not totally mirroring it. Basically mirroring it to my own devices. As you can see, we're accelerating a little bit, little bit of time acceleration, and we're going to bring this around and we'll execute this burn at the proper time. So about no time. Time warp around here, and we've overshot, but that's no big deal because this is a very beautifully solid spacecraft. And we want to go ahead and accelerate just a tiny bit, get this to where we have 0. Okay, so we're a little bit off center with our burn, as you can see here, so I'm going to rotate around, or not. I'm just going to take that, and you can see we end up with our periaps about 35 kilometers, over the Space Center. So we're going to time warp around once again. And we have large-scale stalling. Why do we have large-scale stalling? Simple. We're scraping through the outer edges of the atmosphere, and we're facing topside into the wind. It's a full stall, or it's a full inverted stall. Now, it's not a big enough deal that we need to worry about yet, but if that happens later on, we will want to worry about it. So I'm going to go ahead and correct it now. Now, this thing's kind of fun to bring down, because basically you get to just do everything you can to just stop the thing. I'm basically going to start braking about right there. And the reason being is I'm not going to do any sort of, well, really anything other than just air brake, air brakes, air brakes, air brakes. I've got to get this thing slowed down to where it's going to be able to get low enough to where we can actually talk to, well, get down to the Space Center. Right now we're even too high for, well, judging by Kerbin's size, we're even too high to contact flight or ground controllers. Also, might also have to do with the fact that we no longer have anything in the way of, well, comms satellites talking to it, which is not to be unexpected. We do only have a single 100-kilometer range antenna. That was to control payloads after they get off the shuttle. You can see I'm re-entering with a lot of fuel. Now, why am I re-entering with a lot of fuel? Well, there's a very good reason for that. It seems every time I do this, I get closer, but I generally overshoot. So basically, we're going to try and stop from overshooting here. You can see the drag from those air brakes is going to raise the nose, and you can go ahead and click those on so that they will activate, remain activated. You can see we're really slowing down now. And if I shove the nose down and really work into it, I can get lower. When we're not traveling at about 20 or at near orbital velocities, this thing will slow down very quickly, and you can dive it, and it will not increase. Or you can dive it in about a 60 degree dive. It will not gain any speed. So you can see we're just trying to keep the nose down so that we lose altitude. Will we gain any altitude? No. The air up here is very thin, so there's not much for the wing to bite into. The trouble is, if we end up very high and very fast over the Space Center, we're not going to really have anywhere to go. Good news is we've still got quite a bit more time until we have to worry about being high and fast. We're still bleeding off velocity. We're losing almost 10,000 feet a minute, or 10,000 feet per minute of altitude. See, I'm just going to shove the nose down with the RCS and keep it there, so that we keep that 10,000 feet per minute descent rate going. Because I want to get down into the atmosphere where it is thicker, so that it will, or so that the air brakes will bite, and so the wing will bite and we'll get as much drag going as possible. Now, how much more effective is this compared to the shuttle's method of doing turns up at high altitudes, trying to slow down? And as we all know, it succeeded, except for the one time that, well, basically re-entry heating kind of exploded the vehicle. That was the Columbia disaster, unfortunately. The entire crew was killed. Well, it works out like this. This is a very ineffective method. We're not using the atmosphere really at all. With any efficiency, as you can see, we're just basically trying to brute force our way down. It's not elegant at all. Temperatures at the front of the spacecraft are reaching almost 1,000 degrees Celsius, as you can see. We're still descending very quickly, but we're bleeding off a lot of airspeed. And we can, if we have to, divert over there. I have not tried to divert, but it's probably doable. In fact, I almost guarantee you it's a doable thing. So I'm going to go ahead and blow those brakes away, or stow them away, and we're going to descend to the airport. And as you can see, we are very fast. And here's where those brakes really come in handy, is you flip those barn doors open and it pulls this thing to a stop. And now we're going to pull out at about 5,000 feet, a few miles from the runway, blow those things back down, and we're going to be able to make the runway, most likely. How are we going to be able to? I have no clue right now. I'm just saying that I think we can. This thing's got a very good glide ratio. If I need to, I've still got fuel. If I need to, I can dump fuel. So I'm pretty sure we're going to make it. I'm going to go ahead and give yaw control to our friend Ferrum Aerospace. And Ferrum Aerospace is our friend right here because we want this thing to glide forever. Even if we just get to the green, that's perfectly okay. Because that means that we did not die. The green is what I consider life as well. The lighter green, not this green. This green is not good. I've landed this thing off airport, and it does not like to land off airport much at all. It tends to do this thing called crash. Crashing is never fun, obviously. So we're still on kind of a 45, not quite a 45, more like a 20-degree angle for the final. We're trying a straight in because that's generally what you do when you're gliding. You can see I'm trying to trade some airspeed for altitude because we're still ways out. Don't have any numbers. I'm going to probably do an ILS on either end just so that I've got some form of distance measuring. Unfortunately, the designers of the spacecraft's panel did not see fit to install distance measuring equipment or any other form of navigation other than the map, which really is not very good for measuring distance. So we will rectify that shortly. As you can see, we're getting very low, so I'm going to go ahead and fire this engine up. We're going to use this engine for its other purpose of basically keeping this thing from hitting. And you can see we're blowing off some more fuel, and we've got the runway made. Granted, we're not on the center line, so I am going to go ahead and try and correct that. This thing does not really like it. This thing glides so much better than the actual space shuttle, I would say. That thing, according to the pilots, did not, or glided like a brick. So basically very badly. And you can see we're going to go ahead and blow out the air brakes, and we will come to a stop actually before the next taxiway. Shocking. So you can see there's our actual whole flight for one of these spacecraft. We managed to make it back to the Space Center. Granted, I did not do a perfect approach. I could have done so much better of an approach. But we did make it. That's the important part. Now let's go ahead and let's recover this, and we're going to go ahead and see what we can do to insert the other thing. And I'll probably give that to you in 4 times speed, just because I know you guys don't really want to see me do that. Alrighty guys, back to the post-commentary side of this. We're basically trying to insert this thing into a semi-synchronous orbit over Kerbin. And it wasn't the best. None of these are the closest orbits to synchronous at all. They're about 80 meters per second off. from synchronous. So basically, the whole constellation moved out of alignment while I was doing this. So we ended up not having any ability to do anything at all. So you can see we're just kind of getting everything circularized, well, get the apoapse raised up to semi-synchronous altitude. This is not fun because these spacecraft are very off-center with their center of mass. They're not easy to fly at all. And it took about 12 in-game hours, 10, 12, somewhere in there, in-game hours to get these things up. Or it generally takes that long to get any of them up this high to get it done and get them circularized. So, yeah, this is all just infrastructure. I'm Combatant 5. Thanks for watching.